E-bike, naku, mga Kalaboy magandang, araw sa inyo. Napansin ko lang, mukhang dumadami na yung mga e-bike ngayon sa'tin sa Pilipinas, eh. Well, mabilis, tipid, ano pa hinahanap natin, porma, 'yan, iwas sa polusyon, makatipid man dahil nga sa pagtataas ng mga presyo na ng krudo ngayon, ano? Pero ano ba meron sa kabilang banda kung bakit nauuso ang e-bike at ano ang puwedeng maging epekto na sa atin ito? Well, gusto ko lang ipakita sa inyo kung ano 'tong mga nakita kong video sa YouTube din na mukhang napakadelikado rin siguro. Delikado itong mga e-bike na 'to, may side effect din pala. Kita niyo ayun, oh, pumupot ako, susunog. So, bihira ako nakakita pa ng, you know, gas type na scooter o motor na sumabog pero ito palang mga 'to may tendency palang sumabog din ang mga e-bike ano. Kaya may paliwanag dito ang gumawa ng video na 'to, pakinggan natin.
Why are Chinese electric motorcycles so apt to explode in such a spectacular
Madami
manner?
sa China yan,
Well, it all
halos
comes
sa
down to
China
an
ano,
unregulated industry. I'm
halos
going to
mga tao
explain.
dun,
You see,
kamunaming
motorcycles in
gamitin nila yan
China
ano,
are seen as a poor man's form of
itong
transport.
mga
In fact,
motorcycle
motorcycles
or
are
scooter.
banned in all of the large cities in China. And I'll explain to you why. Number one, snatch and grab robberies were a huge issue.
Yun,
There used to
uso
be
din dito
gangs
yan,
of bandits roaming around, ready to grab someone's purse or their phone or whatever, and they
riding in
quite often drag
tandem.
people down the road doing so. This was a huge issue in China when I first got there. And
Issue
this
nila
is
sa
something
China
that the
yan,
Chinese
issue rin
government
natin yan
decided,
dito sa
especially the local
Pilipinas.
city governments and the local provincial governments decided to stamp out by banning motorcycles outright. But of course,
May mga
there's another
lugar na
reason behind it.
pinagbabawal din pala
Motorcycles look poor. And when you're a
sa
local
China na
government in your city, you're trying to
pumasok ang
produce this image of a
motorcycle.
pristine, modern city. You don't want motorcycles in it because it just runs the place down. You've got these ramshackle bikes going here and there, dodging through traffic, doing all these crazy
Yun,
things. So, of course, that's another reason why motorcycles were
gamitin
banned
naman
in the
talaga ang
larger cities.
mga
So, in
motorcycle
order to
ano.
replace motorcycles, you had all these factories producing cheap, low end motorcycles and scooters. They had to
Yun
somehow come
lang,
up with a way to bring in revenue. So, they retrofitted all of their old scooters and made them into
para daw
electric
makatipid,
scooters. It's very simple to
yan,
do.
nawawala
Throw a
yung
bunch of
yung
lead
yung
acid
tibay,
batteries
oh,
inside
ganda
of
man,
them, put a hub motor on the rear, a little speed controller, and you're done.
grabe.
I know a lot about this, by the way, because I used
Sa
to
taas ng
modify
demand,
and
nawawala
ride
yung
and
yung
mess around with
tibay
electronic
o ano,
scooters and e-scooters, whatever you want to
ah,
call them, e-bikes in
ganda
China
ng
for the
isang
longest time. And that's because I couldn't ride a
pyesa.
real motorcycle in the big cities. So my main form of transport was an e-bike of some
Dito
form or
mga
the other. And I
Kalaboy
did all
'no,
sorts of
sa
funny things
dami
with
ng
them,
demand
soup them
bumababa
up, and it
ang
was actually a lot
quality
of
ng
fun.
mga piyesa.
Now, the thing
Pero ito yung
is,
isang dahilan
those
kung bakit
first
daw
generation e-bikes
nagkakaproblema ang
used lead acid
mga
batteries. You know, that's the
e-bike
kind
mo.
of battery that
Bakit
most cars
pumuputok yung
have
lead
that,
acid
you
ang
start for your
laman ng
starter.
battery?
And they're actually not too dangerous. They don't catch on fire spontaneously, really. I mean, if they would, you'd see a lot of that. So lead acid batteries are fairly safe. But they're not safe for the environment, I'll tell you that much. The chemicals and the
Okey.
way they're produced, if not
Pero
properly
sa dami nga
recycled,
naman 'pag
can be
nasira,
devastating.
expose.
You don't want that stuff running off into a river or into your groundwater or your soil.
Oo.
But here's the thing. The e-bikes were then unregulated. You didn't need a license to ride them. They didn't need
Sa atin
license
ngayon parang
plates because it
kailangan
was
mo
a
na
new
kahit
thing.
e-bike may lisensya ka na
And they got
dapat
pumped
ano?
out by the millions. And so people would buy them because they're fairly cheap and ride them around the cities, and it created the same issue
Oo,
massive amounts of
paikot-ikot
traffic
ka,
jams,
kahit saan
chaos.
makakarating ka.
This image of a poor city because now you've got ramshackle e bikes everywhere rather than motorcycles. So the Chinese government stepped
Bumukha
in
daw
and
cheap ang
started
isang
to
siyudad 'pag
confiscate
maraming
e bikes. So
scooter
they'd
o mga
confiscate all of these
motorcycle na
things, they'd set up roadblocks,
paikot-ikot
they'd
o
put them on the
dumadaan.
back of trucks. In fact, I had an e bike confiscated from me at some point. And it was very random. There were
Dito
no
sa
real
China inuhuli
notices
na,
about what you could and couldn't ride. Finally, they
ini-impound
brought
na.
out some rules that you could only ride the smaller e-bikes, the little foldable type ones, and even those have been
Ayan, may
now
nakikita rin
banned
ako
in a
diyan
lot of places.
sumasakay din ng
So,
LRT,
anyway,
bitbit nila.
what you ended up with were massive fields of electric bikes, just huge, the
Grabe,
scale of which you've never seen. And they
grabe.
would
Uy,
just sit there to rot because First of all, it's too expensive to recycle or scrap them. Nobody wants to
Oo,
take ownership of that. The local government certainly doesn't want to deal with it. The owner has no
nakapon
access
na 'to,
because his bike has been taken
ang
from him
dami,
by the
oh,
government and you can't
na-obsolete na.
get them back. So you have these massive graveyards of these things rotting away into the soil, batteries and all. And occasionally they'd catch fire, and it's apocalyptic when they
Ayun
do.
lang, 'di na ma-dispose,
Absolutely
kain pa.
horrendous and
'Pag
terrible for the
pumutok ang isa,
environment.
sabog
But
lahat.
the fires started when lithium ion batteries started to become the mainstay. Because as we know, technology progresses. And we went from lead acid batteries in these bikes to lithium ion batteries. You know, the same type of battery you have in your phone or you have in
Eh, yung mga
any electronic device
yung mga
these
bagong
days
klase
would be
ng
some
battery yan,
variant
mga
of a
lithium na yan.
lithium ion battery. So these, unfortunately, are far more
Na
volatile.
rechargeable, oo, pero
If you don't have proper quality control, if those batteries aren't properly
okey,
maintained and looked after, there's a chance that they could, well,
ito
explode,
pala
as
yung
we see in this footage
sumasabog,
over
oh.
here.
Oh, grabe.
And these bikes are so poorly put together because it's just a mass copy of a copy of a copy. Factories everywhere
Mass
springing up making these
production,
things very
nawawala yung
easily. I
quality.
know because I used to build my own ones because I could go and get a
Mm,
frame here, body parts there, this
yun
there,
lang.
the motor here, there. You could just buy these things on Taobao. All the factories, they just buy all these random bits and pieces. The quality control is not there. Slap it together, you're ready to go.
Oo, walang
And
quality
these things
control na sa sobrang
vibrate and
dami
you've got the
minsan, oo.
batteries shaking around because they're not properly mounted, and
Maalog
it's
naman
really
ang
just
tela, oh.
it's a recipe for disaster. Okay, so these things catch fire, and it doesn't only happen in China. In fact, not that long ago, this year, 4 people died in New York because in
Yun,
New
yun,
York
yun.
Chinatown there was an e-bike
Sa New
shop
York,
that
Chinatown, may
was repairing
sumasabog na
these
rin.
Chinese electric vehicles and charging the batteries there. And guess what? One of these janky batteries caught fire, and the whole shop went up, and the
Grabe.
apartments above caught fire too, and 4 people actually
Sunog,
died. And
damay
if
ang
you look
building, oh.
into it, and if you actually start to do some investigation, you'll find out that across the country in the USA and elsewhere, there are many fires, casualties, and deaths caused
Kaya
by
yan mga kalaboy ha, sa
electric
pagpili
scooters
ng
and
motor,
other
rider din ako
electronic
pero
gadgets that have got,
pili lang
lithium
ng
ion
maayos,
batteries in that
pili
are
lang
of
ng
poor
tama
quality.
o, you know,
So,
bibili
a
ka
little bit
man
of a
kahit
PSA,
mahal
by the
pero
way,
kung
before we
may
continue
kalidad
here
naman,
is if you do happen to have some or other, I don't know if it's kind of like a Power Wheels type thing for your kid or a scooter, electric scooter or electric bike, anything of that nature, and you've maybe bought it for your kid, you've forgotten it, stuck it in the garage or something, please, please go make sure that it's not plugged in and sitting on a charger all the time.
oo,
If you
tama, tama,
can,
tama.
store it
Yes.
outside,
Disiplina rin
especially
mga
if it's not
kalaboy
a
ha.
proper name brand and has a
Eh,
name on
kung
it that you can't
chinurse mo't
pronounce. I
kaya
mean, I'm talking about
nakalimutan mo ng
hoverboards,
bunutin na
anything that's got a
overcharge, may
sizable
tendency rin palang
lithium ion
puputok
battery
yung
in it.
battery niya.
Please store it outside.
Yes. Be
Or make
responsible ka.
sure that it's in good shape and that it's, like I said, not charging. Because,
Totoo naman.
if it gets too hot in the garage, if something goes, you never know what could set this thing off,
Minsan
but they
yan
are a
yan
fire
yang
hazard, and the stats
aksidente
on
o
that are
yang
proved. You can go look it up. I'm not
yun
trying
ang
to
problema nagko-cause
scare
din kung
anyone or be a
nag-umpisa ka na
fearmonger
maging
or
pabaya.
anything like that, but please don't take the risk. Just like I said, you can go read up on it. It is a risk.
Yeah,
Anyway,
tama, tama, tama.
I hope you can understand why these Chinese e-bikes, you keep seeing videos of them catching fire and why they are such a
Oo nga
bad
eh,
hazard. And
tama
it
ka
really
sa
boils down
TikTok,
to the fact
sa
that it's
mga
a very
reels.
unregulated industry. And the abuse that these things suffer is quite
Kaya tama din
horrendous
naman ng
in
government
China.
kaya
Seen it
kinakailangan
firsthand, done
i-regulate
it
lahat
myself.
eh, bantayan,
And it's no
tignan yung
surprise
quality,
that these things catch
i-control.
fire, to be honest. Here's the thing, though. I wanted to end this video with something very positive. You
Ito mga kalaboy, oh, may
watching
sinasabi
my
siyang
video
kwentong
about those fields of rotting
bakit
EVs.
patungkol sa
Remember that video
pagdami
I
ng
did?
mga to,
It got a great amount of views and it got
mura,
featured in
maraming
the
bibili,
press.
kaya
And it
lang,
actually forced some
ilang
change
buwan
in
o taon
China
lang,
because nobody had really
i-dispose mo
shone
na
a
yan.
spotlight on it before. Now, some of the local
Dumadami,
governments were
ang hirap
actually questioned
i-dispose.
by big
Yan
news
o,
outlets. And it
nasa
created a
sasakyan pati, hindi lang
fairly
naman sa
uncomfortable
scooter, ano, pati sa
situation for
sasakyan
the
pala, oh.
Chinese government where they actually
Daming
had
tambak,
to
oh.
address the problem and say, yeah, okay, we will try to clean up and move, or at least they put these false promises that they're going to move some of these cars and
Paano mo
try to clean up some
i-dispose
of
lahat
these
ng yung na
graveyards
yan?
because they were sitting there to rot. And they would have
Oo,
continued to
tama,
sit there to
tama.
rot, batteries and all, into the ground. And the reason
Grabe.
behind this is the majority of these big graveyards, these fields of cars that you see, are part of these failed car sharing startups that were subsidized by the Chinese government. Remember, the
Hindi
Chinese
na naman
government
sa
is
China
making a
yan, ha? Pero,
massive push to
I'm not
make it
talking
look
about
as if they're
Chinese
the
only,
leader
pero
in green
sa
technology in the
buong
world.
mundo,
This is
no?
also another reason why e-bikes
Ayan,
have been
kailangan
ramped up and
responsable
pushed
din
out
daw
and
mga kumpanya
gotten to the
kung
point where they
paano
are in China.
pangalagaan
And because of
at
this,
i-dispose
these
itong
cars
mga to.
were all
Sa
registered,
dami,
they
di
were
na alam
all
kung saan na
paid for by
ilalagay.
the government. And so
Grabe, oh.
now the company has received the money for this car. They produced the car, they registered it, it's got a license plate. Now, what are they going to do with it? They can't sell it. If they try to sell it or move it on, well, now they have to explain to the Chinese government why they're not giving the money back, right?
Pero
They also have to
itong
explain
kwento
to the
kasi
Chinese
ito
government
patungkol sa
why the
China na
subsidy was a
isa rin
waste
sa
of
mga
money because
problema
it's
ng
just
China
sitting in
to.
a field somewhere. So it's too
Sa
difficult and
sobrang
too
taas ng
uncomfortable to
demand.
deal with. And that's
Mura,
why none
daming
of these
bumibili,
graveyards will go away.
marami
They're
nag-produce.
not sitting there
Yan.
waiting for some kind of an
Nasira ang
arbitration
pyesa,
in court about who's going to
nasira na
take
ang buong
control of what
pangalan ng
asset.
mga
No,
model na yan,
because
ano,
they've
walang
already been
bibili.
bought and paid for by the Chinese government to these companies that just pump them out and put them in a field when they could no longer
Kaya
really be
ganito
viable.
naghihirap ngayon ang
So they will
ekonomiya
just
ng
continue
China.
to sit there and rot. And they would have continued to just
Yes,
sit there and rot
as
completely
productions
untouched
gumastos
if
na.
it wasn't for my video and the
Pag
subsequent news
pumalpak ka
coverage.
isang pyesa,
So
wala nang
now there's
bibili.
a chance that some of them are going to be cleaned
Yes.
up. And I think that's fantastic that you have been a
Sana
part of
naman
this
dito,
change. So
Kalaboy,
again,
ano?
as I always say, the only way you
Yes.
can ever force any kind of change in China, or I should say enact any kind of change in China, is by making the Chinese government lose face. So I wanted to say thank you for watching my videos. Thank you very much for being a part of this change. We're actually doing
Yes.
something good.
Totoo naman,
If you
nagkaroon
want to
ako ng
find out
idea
more
dito.
about what's going on in China, and I'm
Yes,
talking about
totoo
up
naman.
to date.
Ayun, mga kalaboy, no? Bandang huli, ang proper maintenance lang siguro. Being responsible, i-charge ng tama, kung kailan, bunutin pagkatapos, babantayin nyo, siyempre, di mo yung iwanan yan pagka yan naka-charge, ano, otherwise puputok. Checkin nyo rin from time to time ang mga, not only e-bikes natin, pati mga motorcycle natin. No? Check nyo rin, battery gauge niya, gaano na ba katagal yan, kailan dapat palitan, ano, pati yung mga wirings, mga circuit na yan, make sure lang na nakadikit ng tama, no? Be responsible po. At nung sa gano'n naman po, tumagal yung mga nabili natin kahit sabihin na disposable yung mga ibang piyesa niya, no? Para din naman masulit naman natin yung ginastos natin. Kahit ito cheap, pero kung iniingatan natin at, i-maintain ng tama, tatagal ito. Tatagal sa atin at magagamit mo pa ng matagal. At the same time, iiwas sa aksidente. Yan naman po ang pinaka-importante sa atin. Kaya nga po tayo, no, bumili ng mura, magamit natin pang araw-araw. Kung responsable ka, may iwasan po natin aksidente. Makakabiyahe ka ng maginawa, kakauwi ka ng safe. Okay, guys, ride safely, drive safely, maintain your scooters and motorcycles, especially mga e-bikes, i-charge ng tama at malayo ang mararating natin. Okay, salamat mga kapalaboy sa inyong panonood.